It's amazing, isn't it? All of us have thought about living a longer and healthier life, but none of us really know what to do about it or how to go about it. What is truly the secret to living to be 100 while looking like you're 50? I think over the next 28 minutes, you'll be amazed at what you have to hear. Hello, I'm Steve Strain. Maybe some of you have watched an infomercial before, maybe you haven't. Either way, this is definitely one you won't want to miss, because the information we have to talk about today not only could change your life, it could prolong your life. Prolong your life and prolong your youth. Not just you, but your family and your friends. We begin with Robert Barefoot, noted biochemist who's done extensive research into the relationship between nutrition and disease. He's also authored a couple of books, Death by Diet and The Calcium Factor. Also joining us is Carol Hackle, a registered pharmacist from Arvada, Colorado. She'll offer to Bob some insightful questions from the perspective of a pharmaceutical professional. Bob, I know that you started off as an analytical chemist studying mineral digenesis. What led you into the area, though, of nutrition?
Well, when I first started studying mineral digenesis, I had always been intrigued with calcium, biological calcium. I was intrigued because as a child I'd read in a book that calcium is the most abundant mineral in the human body, and I wanted to know why. Bones wasn't the answer. It had to be more than that. So in my position, I was always able to gather information and build a great big library on biological calcium. So it allowed me to build this huge library on biological calcium, and as a result of that, in 1982, Dr. Carl Risch knocked on my door. He was looking for a calcium chemist, and Dr. Carl Risch had brought with him a whole bunch of autopsies. These were autopsies that demonstrated that the people that died did not have cancer, and yet their medical records from the Mayo Clinic, from the University of Rochester, University of Toronto, had said that they were all terminal cancer patients. And what this man had done is he had given these patients large quantities of calcium, and for some reason the cancer disappeared. Well, boy, I was hooked. I was fascinated, and he wanted me to help him write the book, The Calcium Factor, that would explain to the public how calcium supplements can indeed prevent and reverse cancer.
Bob, I'd mentioned in the opening, living to be 100 but looking like you're 50. Now, how is it that somebody could go about doing that?
You know, Steve, what you're suggesting not only can happen, it does happen, and it happens all over the world. For example, there's the famous Georgians and Azerbaijanis in Russia, and in Pakistan we have the famous Hanzas. In China we have the Bamas, millions of Bamas, and over in South America we have the Tikaki Indians, the Vilcabamba Indians in Ecuador, and we have the very famous Okinawans in Japan. All of these people routinely live to be 100. Now, this doesn't mean to say everybody makes it to 100. It's just that a lot more of them make it to 100 than here in America. For example, the Okinawans have 10 times as many centenarians as we have in the United States. And when they're in their 70s, 80s, and 90s, they are extremely active people. For example, the Hansa men refuse to have children until they're at least 70, when they're more mature enough to handle children. And that's a fact of life.
Bob, you mentioned calcium reversed cancer. What other diseases does calcium have an effect on, and how does that work?
Well, in 1952, Dr. Carl Risch was the first doctor to treat his patients with large amounts of vitamins and minerals, especially calcium. And he found that after 6 months, patients with osteoporosis, for example, were much improved. He improved patients that had diabetes. It didn't matter what the disease was, lupus, multiple sclerosis, there was all dramatic improvements in their disease. And what happened in 1962 is Dr. Risch met Dr. Otto Warburg. Now, Dr. Otto Warburg won 2 Nobel Prizes in medicine in cancer. He was the first doctor to describe the cause of cancer, and therefore he knew the cure for cancer. And what happened, he told Dr. Risch, was what calcium does, it's like calcium to the human body is like water to a fire. He said, when you put calcium in the human body, it douses the acid buildup. You see, as we get older, the lack of minerals causes an acid buildup, and this acid buildup expels oxygen. You can't have oxygen and acid together. So we get sicker and sicker and sicker. As a matter of fact, there's been 150 diseases attributed to calcium deficiency, mainly because of this acid buildup. So you see, when you give your body a lot of calcium, you douse the acid, You fill up with oxygen, and your body is capable of curing itself.
Wow, Bob, so what I hear you saying is calcium is really a crucial element for cancer patients.
Yes, and that was in 1982. And in 1982, there were only 2 biological publications. In other words, 2 scientists were studying biological calcium. Last year, there were over 30,000. Calcium has become the hottest topic in medical research. And last year, even the Journal of the American Medical Association published documents. They published studies done by the Strang Cancer Research Institute and the University of New York that suggested that, quote, calcium supplements can both prevent and reverse colon cancer. What they said was that the calcium supplements make the cancer cells grow to normal. And they did use the word reverse. And not only that, but the New England Journal of Medicine picked up the story. And because of these medical journals, the Los Angeles Times, the New York Times did front page stories on that super nutrient calcium apparently curing cancer. They didn't use the word cure, they say reversing cancer. And then the Reader's Digest, February issue, come up with that miraculous calcium supplement story. They said not only does it appear to reverse cancer, but it also can reverse hypertension, that's high blood pressure, and about 7 other major diseases. And of course, the Reader's Digest wouldn't say anything that hadn't passed the 200 lawyers that are keeping them out of trouble. So obviously, the scientific community is unanimous. The medical journals are reporting it. Newspapers and national magazines are talking about it now. Calcium supplements can indeed reverse cancer.
What about heart disease and MS?
Okay, well, acidosis is crucial in both. For example, heart disease. Heart disease, everyone knows, is plaque buildup in the arteries. Why don't we have plaque buildup in the veins? Same cholesterol, same body, same blood. No one's ever heard of anybody having hardening of the veins. And the answer is the artery is different than the veins in one aspect. The artery has muscle tissue around the outside to squeeze to increase the blood pressure. So what happens when your body becomes acidic is the acid starts chewing holes in the muscle. Now, the artery will burst and kill you, but the body responds by hardening that artery so that it won't burst. It builds up plaque, preventing the burst that was caused by the acid. So you see, if you get rid of the acid, you get rid of the acid attacking the muscle tissue, and therefore you get rid of heart disease. Heart disease can be eliminated by getting rid of the acid in the stomach. Now, multiple sclerosis is quite similar. Everyone knows that the myelin tissue coating the nerves is chewed up. Let's ask the question, what's chewing it up? Body acids are chewing it up. Body acids that are a direct result of calcium deficiency. So, when you give the body calcium, it like Otto Warburg says, it douses the acid. There's no more acid, therefore there's no more myelin chew-up. It's a fast way of stopping MS.
Why is coral calcium so much more absorbable than any other product on the market?
Well, you know, coral calcium has been consumed for over 600 years. There are millions of testimonials. No one doubts that it works. Everyone says, why? And that's a good question, you see, because every biochemist knows that calcium is the hardest mineral for the human body to absorb. It's the most important mineral, and yet it's the hardest mineral for the human body to absorb. Did you know when the average elderly take their, quote, calcium supplements, they're lucky to get 2 or 3%. So that 1,000 milligrams suddenly comes down to be 20 milligrams, 30 milligrams, and they need 800 to end the day. They don't even come close to satisfying themselves. On the other hand, let's take a look at coral. Well, see, coral calcium was produced by Mother Nature. It took millions of years to produce, millions of years of leaching the nutrients from the ocean. And in Okinawa, we have something special that occurs. There are hundreds of islands. Half the islands are volcanic, and they were spewing ash. Well, volcanic ash is just loaded with nutrients and nutrition, which is absorbed by the coral in Okinawa. So it is absolutely loaded with nutrition.
Coral calcium, mined from the coral reef in Okinawa, Japan. A harvest from one of the treasures of the earth. A rich blessing from Mother Nature. Traditional calcium does not absorb more than 5%. Yet with the nutrient coral calcium, it absorbs up to 100%. Now available to our audience as a special offer, T-Coral, a complete calcium supplement containing 1,000 milligrams of coral calcium. Call this number for more information 1-800-854-8353. 1-800-854-8353. T-Coral. When you need a mineral supplement that really works. Available at these fine stores.
Welcome back. There may be questions you have still for Bob Barefoot, and pharmacist Carol Hackle now will continue to ask Bob more questions about coral calcium.
Now, why do we absorb so much? Well, you see, in Okinawa, the coral has marine microbes, little critters. You know, when you put your food out, like if you leave a piece of meat out on the veranda for 10 hours, it goes bad. Well, goes bad, in technical terms, it means pre-digested. In other words, microbes get involved and they start chewing the meat apart. Now, for the human body to absorb something, you gotta chew it apart. Well, the trouble we have is we don't have marine microbes in our intestine. Our intestines are loaded with natural microbes. And as we eat a lot of nutrition, we start producing salt. Now, you know that piece of meat on the veranda, if you caked it in salt, wouldn't go bad. You see, salt kills these natural microbes. But coral calcium has marine microbes, and they absolutely thrive in the salt. So they thrive, and they digest, and they rip apart. And studies have shown that you get 100% absorption of the calcium. So suddenly, what it means is if you take coral, you are going to get 50 times as much calcium, 50 times as fast in your body. No wonder it works so well.
Wow. Coral calcium, 50-50. 50 times as much, 50 times as fast.
Coral is the answer. Coral works. And it not only gives you the calcium, it gives you the magnesium and 75 other crucial marine nutrients. Wow, it's actually a piece of the Garden of Eden.
Bob, what effect does coral calcium have on people that are on the various diets?
Well, just ask yourself this. If I go on a high-protein diet, which means that I'm not going to eat lots of fruits and vegetables, am I going to be starving myself of other nutrients? And of course, the answer is yes. It has been my experience that the people who go on these diets are 10 times as likely to succeed if they go on the coral, because the coral reinforces these other supplements. In other words, you're getting supplements to replace the supplements that you're losing when you go on the diet. So if you really want to succeed on a diet, you go on coral calcium, and that's what works. Now, I have to add to this, I've seen a lot of people try to get off of drugs. We have drug addicts, for example. And on top of that, we find that the people that are on the coral have 10 times the chance of succeeding in getting off of drugs for the same reason. When you make a strong body, it can react and it can work. And it's always far more successful if you're on coral calcium and try to get off drugs or try to go on a diet.
Fascinating stuff. We'll hear more from Bob in just a little bit, but first, we'd like to show you some testimonials from people who have used coral calcium. They'll talk about how it's changed their lives.
I'm Trina, and at the age of 2, I was diagnosed as being an asthmatic. Doctor visit after doctor visit, medication after medication. My mother was told time and time again, "Oh, don't worry, she'll grow out of it." I'm a mother now with children of my own, and unfortunately, I never did. 6 months ago, I was introduced to a product called coral calcium. This product, coral calcium, has absolutely changed my life. I am so proud to say that today I am on no medication whatsoever, and that is absolutely wonderful.
In 1997, my mom was diagnosed with cancer. She had an ovarian tumor. The doctor informed us that she had about 3 to 6 months to live. I met a man named Dr. Robert Barefoot who informed me that cancer cannot live in a 7.5 environment. My mom's alkali at the time was a 3.6, which means the acid level in her system was thousands of times more than it was supposed to be. There's a nutrient called coral calcium, which will keep the alkali at a 7.5 to help maintain it. My mom's alkali went pretty fast. It went from a 3.6 to a 4.8 in just a matter of less than a week. Within 2 weeks, her alkali was like a 6.8. Within 3 weeks, it was back to the 7.5. By the end of the month, her cancer count was 0.05% shown of cancer. This is quite remarkable. I really believe in this stuff. It worked great for my mom. My mom now, this has been over 3 years. My mom is doing fantastic. Her alkali's up. She's just doing wonderful.
I was getting a lump in my throat and started getting bigger and bigger. After a few months, it was the size of a golf ball. It was actually visible. Believe it or not, after a month of taking this coral calcium, it reduced the size of a jawbone. I get another bottle. For my third bottle, it's gone. And it's just amazing. I still really can't believe it, but it actually happened with me.
7 years ago, I was diagnosed as having prostate cancer. My PSA was 117. I was about ready to be put away. I read Bob Barefoot's book on calcium. So I started taking calcium, magnesium, getting a lot of sun. Did this for approximately 90 days. PSA went down from 40 to 8, and I feel great, thanks to Bob.
Coral calcium, mined from the coral reef in Okinawa, Japan. A harvest from one of the treasures of the earth. A rich blessing from Mother Nature. You have seen the awesome testimonials about coral calcium. People with reversal of cancer, diabetes, lupus, and multiple sclerosis. Traditional calcium does not absorb more than 5%. Yet with the nutrient coral calcium, it absorbs up to 100%. Now available to our audience as a special offer, T-Coral, a complete calcium supplement containing 1,000 milligrams of coral calcium. Call this number for more information, 1-800-854-8353, 1-800-854-8353. T-Coral, when you need a mineral supplement that really works. Available at these fine stores.
I would like to share with you that my arms were totally locked. My elbows were totally gone. The last time I had visited my orthopedic surgeon, he said, honey, I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to tell you that we need to replace both of your elbows. I did not want to go through any more surgery. That night I laid in the bed and I cried out and I said, Lord, I know that there is something out here that you have that can help me. Well, that was the coral calcium. Like I said, I've been on it now for 4 months. If you know anyone that has rheumatoid arthritis, you know that they cannot lift their arms like this. They cannot take their arms straight out like this. My hands, I can totally turn them totally palms up and palms down. The product has just put so much quality back into my life.
Hi, I'm Carol Vincent and I'm from Michigan. I'm so very excited about coral calcium because I've been suffering from severe back pain for quite a few years now. And after taking coral calcium for 3 days, the pain began to ease. And now it's been a few months and the pain's virtually gone. And now I feel that I can go shopping again and do my housework without having to sit down every few minutes to rest my back. And I even am thinking about doing my gardening again this summer. And needless to say, I don't ever want to be without coral calcium.
Coral calcium came, I took the pH health test, and was I ever shocked? I tested bad. I was at 6.0, so I thought, whoa, I'm going to die. You know, what am I going to do? Well, anyway, according to Dr. Barefoot, I needed to have 9 of those coral calciums every day. So that's what I started taking. And I'm here to tell you today that I've had the pH health test again, and I'm at 7.5, and I'm feeling good. I can crawl out of that bed. I've got a lot of energy.
Terrific stories. Now let's get back to more of our conversation. Pharmacist Carol Hackle talking with Bob Barefoot about the benefits of coral calcium.
Bob, coral calcium is obviously great for adults. What about children? What about babies?
Well, when the sperm hits the egg, that's when the mother should start taking coral. Because, you know, a pregnant mother is desperate for all kinds of mineral and nutrition, and they're all found in the coral calcium. Mothers on coral calcium have healthy babies. And from the very first breath, the Japanese start giving their babies coral. And we find that it works, and it's dramatic. We know of mothers who have babies that have colic and they cry all night. And one day on coral, no more colic, no more crying. Coral is the magic minerals when it comes to babies. And babies and children should all take coral.
Bob, if coral is so good for people, what about animals?
Well, actually, coral is really magical when it comes to animals. I have a friend who gives his coral to his horse, racing horses, just before the race, and the horse he gives the coral to always wins the race. I have a neighbor whose dog has osteoporosis so bad it couldn't even walk up to its bowl and eat. 2 weeks on the coral, and the dog is running and flipping. Same thing with cats. Animals seem to respond extremely fast and always in a positive way. It's just absolutely miraculous.
The American public is constantly being told that antacids are an excellent source of calcium. Do you agree with this?
Well, unfortunately, their market is the elderly, and the elderly all have one thing in common. At their age, they only have 1/5 hydrochloric acid in their stomach than they did when they were younger. And they need this aspirin desperately to digest their food so they can intake their nutrients. Now, the worst thing in the world you can do is give these people antacids to wipe out the acid out of their stomach, because the net result will be there's no acid left to digest their food, and you're going to starve these people from nutrition. So no, antacids are not the way to get your calcium. Coral calcium, on the other hand, slips into your stomach so fast, doesn't use up the acid, and the net result is it's a freebie. You don't have to worry about the acid content in your stomach, and you get 50 times as much calcium, 50 times as fast with the coral calcium, and no problem with the acid.
Bob, we hear about kidney stones, gallstones, and the doctor's answer is to avoid calcium.
Yeah, this is a very popular misconception. Doctors believe that if you take calcium, you're going to end up with gallstones, kidney stones. But the truth of the matter is, none of the calcium from your diet ends up in the stones. You see, what happens is calcium deficiency forces the body to go to the bones to get the calcium that the organs need. This calcium has to be transported in the caustic blood. The blood is caustic so that it's full of oxygen. The calcium being transported in the caustic blood then is deposited into the acidic kidney. The pH shift causes precipitation, which is known as kidney stones. In the gallbladder, it's gallstones. In the bone joints, it's bone spurs. So 100% of the kidney stones, gallstones, and bone spurs, 100% of the calcium comes from the bones, and it only came from the bones because it was deficient in the diet. Therefore, consumption of calcium will end this problem, and it does.
In 1978, I had a very private ministry, built a beautiful church, and found out that I had multiple sclerosis. It got to the point, in fact, they said, Earl, the way your legs are going, by 1982, you'll probably be in a wheelchair. By 1982, I was not in a wheelchair yet, although I was walking with those Canadian crutches, those forearm crutches. By 1984, I could not do the work of a pastor any longer. I couldn't go visit people, couldn't go to the hospital unless it was for myself. And that just seemed to be it. Calcium? I started taking it. Within 1 week, I was working out in the backyard. I laid my crutches down and started walking around, and all of a sudden realized, what are you doing? And for all intents and purposes, I was pain-free. A lot of people wonder, those brochures, whether they're real testimonials or not, or is somebody just making it up. I want to tell you, I was with the other people that had the testimonials on that brochure. They're real. They're real. And I know JJ wanted to look up this guy. Who's this Dr. Bailey in Ohio? I'm going to find him. Here I was, right in his backyard all the time. So, it's real, folks. And not only do I not use a wheelchair, and I do not use crutches, but I don't even use a cane anymore.
I've been suffering from fibromyalgia and osteoarthritis and muscular atrophy for years. Over the past 2 years, I had no life. The only thing that kept me going was the fact that I was going to be a grandmother. When my granddaughter was 3 months old, coral calcium came into my life. And what a difference it has made.
Now stay tuned. We'll go back to Bob in just a little bit as he talks with Carol Moore about coral calcium. First, some information you'll want to know about tea coral.
After 30 years of research, studying the 17 cultures around the world that live to be over 100 and retain their youth, Robert Barefoot has determined they all have one thing in common. They consume enormous quantities of calcium. Now, with tea coral, you get the calcium absorption similar to the cultures in the world that consume abundant quantities. Call this number to receive your supply of this amazing nutrient. 1-800-854-8353. That's 1-800-854-8353. Tea coral. When you need a mineral supplement that really works. Available at these fine stores.
Bob, what makes tea coral better than any other calcium supplement on the market?
Well, first off, it's not man-made. It took millions of years to produce coral calcium. That's millions of years of leaching nutrients out of the ocean. It contains 75 crucial trace mineral nutrients. Also, it contains substantial amounts of magnesium. Biologists have discovered that the perfect calcium to magnesium ratio is 2 calcium to 1 magnesium. And guess what? This coral contains 24% calcium, 12% magnesium, the perfect biological ratio. Man could not have done this better. And then on top of this, the coral calcium contains marine microbes, little critters that get into your stomach and allow you to absorb 100%. Therefore, instead of going to the store and getting nutrients where you only get 2 and 3% benefit, the coral calcium provides you everything and you get 100% absorption.
Bob, do you have any future predictions for coral calcium?
Oh, absolutely. From the thousands of testimonials that I've heard, and from the millions of testimonials that have occurred over the past 600 years, there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that coral calcium is going to become the nutrient of the 21st century. And I firmly believe that within a few years, the word coral calcium is going to be on the lips of every American.
I sure hope you found Robert Barefoot as enlightening as I have about coral calcium and its benefits. If you have any other questions or about the product tea coral, stay tuned. We'll have information momentarily. In the meantime, thanks for watching. I'm Steve Strain. Now have a happy, healthy, and long life.
After 30 years of research, studying the 17 cultures around the world that live to be over 100 and retain their youth, Robert Barefoot has determined they all have one thing in common. They consume enormous quantities of calcium. For more information about this amazing nutrient, coral calcium, and to receive your supply of tea coral, please call 1-800-854-8353. That's 1-800-854-8353. Tea coral. When you need a mineral supplement that really works. Available at these fine stores.
There's absolutely no doubt in my mind that coral calcium is going to become the nutrient of the 21st century.